Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome into another episode of Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Robbery, and as always, guys, just like to welcome you all to the show. If you're streaming us right here on our YouTube channel, thank you so much for tuning in. You get to see this beautiful face that's made for radio, like I always tell everybody. And if you're listening to us on your favorite streaming platform, thank you so much also for tuning in, guys. Man, I have to tell you, we are in the middle of the week right now. It is some nasty weather coming through South Louisiana this afternoon. But at the end of the day, you get home from a hard day of work. I get to sit down and talk outdoors with all of you tuning into the show. So thank you so much, guys. Like I mentioned, the weather's been pretty rough this afternoon. Hopefully everybody made it home safe. We had a lot of lightning this evening, a lot of rain today that got dropped this afternoon here in Louisiana, as well as more lightning than I've seen in quite a while, guys. So hopefully everybody still has power. Everybody made it home safely for the evening. And we're going to go ahead and get started talking about the outdoors tonight, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I can't stress that enough. And tonight I'm excited. I really am excited, as I am for every show that we do, because tonight I have a good friend of mine, a special guest that's going to join us tonight, and we're going to be talking fishing tonight, guys. I know if you've been tuning in to the last couple of episodes where we kicked off season 5, we were talking waterfowl hunting, and a lot of people talk to us and ask us, they say, man, what do you guys do for content during the summer months whenever it's not duck season? And to be honest with you, we do pretty much anything that you guys do outdoors. We go fishing, we go frogging, we do all kind of outdoor activities here in our great state in the boot of Louisiana. And we whatever rolls and we feel like doing, guys, that's what we roll with. So we've been doing quite a bit of fishing lately, working more than anything, I have to be honest with you. But we've been doing a lot of fishing. And as we get more into the summer months, we're going to be doing quite a bit more fishing, and we'll be sharing those experiences with you guys. So if you've been following us right here on the YouTube channel, you probably know that we released a couple of fishing videos from a trip that we took Sunday. And me and Jackson went out, did some fishing in a local pond, a private pond that we got access to, and we really had a good time, man. We caught some beautiful post-spawn bass in that lake that we went to Sunday, and really, really had a good time. We got some good video footage for you guys. And if you haven't checked it out, look right here on the YouTube channel. Check out the videos that we posted over the last couple of days. I think you guys, if you enjoy fishing, you love bass fishing, especially a jig bite bass fishing, you're going to love the video that we just put out, guys. So check that out. And we really appreciate you guys sharing it. If you enjoy it, share it with your buddies. But tonight, guys, like I mentioned, I have a friend of mine on. We're going to be talking custom rod building in the market and the industry of custom rods. If you do any kind of fishing, you know that custom rod building has become a huge business, not only from a professional standpoint with anglers that are fishing Major League Fishing, Bassmaster Elite Series, all the major circuits, but also from a local standpoint. So tonight we're going to be inviting our friend, Mr. Doug Blacklock with Kajun Limb Outdoors. Doug's a good friend of mine. We've known each other for quite some time. And we struck up a friendship years ago. When I was working retail, Doug is a guy that I came across. We met, we struck up a friendship, and I always fell in love with his products and his rods that he was building back in the day, and helped him kind of sell a bunch of rods in the early days whenever he was trying to get it off the ground. And now he's involved in so much more. He does, a lot of events that he does where he helps children out learning how to, go out there and fish. He supports local charities, tournaments, all that type of stuff. And we're going to talk to Doug about all that tonight and kind of what got him into the custom rod building business, guys. So I'm going to bring Doug in with us right now. Make sure we got a good connection tonight for you guys. And we're going to welcome Doug to the show if it's all right with all of y'all. So here we go. What's up, my buddy? What's happening?
The face made for radio.
I tell people all the time, I say I have a face made for radio, so that's why I do these podcasts. And even though I'm on YouTube and we have a channel and we do social media, we try to put Jackson out there a little bit more than me nowadays.
But see, you didn't tell the full story about when I met you at Bowie Outfitters.
No, I figured we could get into that. You and I go a long ways back, and we've known each other for, I don't know, how many years have we known each other for now?
I've been building probably 16 years. And I met you. I walked into Bowie Outfitters, and that's where I met you first. And you were running the tackle department. And I told you about my rods, and you're like, sure, bring them in. Let me see what you're doing.
That's right. I remember that, man, like it was yesterday.
And would you tell me probably a year or so later, after we really became friends and you were selling my stuff?
You're
Do you remember what you told me you said?
I do not. You're going to have to refresh me.
In your mind, you were like, what is this guy going to bring in here? What does this guy have? And you're like, this is going to be another guy trying to peddle his junk.
Well, hey, in all fairness, in our business, and retail now, you have a pretty good grasp of how that all works. I mean, there's new vendors coming through the door every day. So you see a lot of products, a lot of guys trying to push their products. And you know what? As a salesman, I respect that. And I think when I met you, Doug, that it was kind of a mutual respect because I've been in sales my whole life, and I'm not one of them guys that just try to turn down a sales guy walking through a door pitching a product. I'm always open to new ideas.
Right.
With your rods and your product, Kajun Limb rods, whenever I first saw your product, man, it was different than what was out there at the time compared to what you were seeing in all the retail stores. So
back then they were spiral wrap rods.
That's right. You were 100%, I think, spiral wrap rods back then, which was completely different. And you had to explain the concept to me kind of that situation. And for those of our listeners who are listening tonight that aren't real familiar with spiral wrap rods, kind of explain the concept behind that when you were first starting out with that.
The biggest deal with it is when you fight a fish on the old rods, the guides were so high up off the center line of the blank, somebody came with the idea to get the guides to the bottom, and that would fight the torque. So everybody that fishes, when you fight a big fish and he runs off to your left, your wrist cranks to the right. You don't know it because you've been doing it for years. That's the line trying to flip to the bottom side of the blank.
Wow.
The easiest way for you to do it, to figure it out, for a person to see it, is put your line through the first guide and skip all the rest and put it to the tip. Put the line through the tip, load your rod up, and your line's at the bottom. So your line is always trying to flip to the bottom. So you would start with a guide at the top and just roll it around to the bottom side, and the rest is history.
That's an interesting concept. And I remember you talking about that, how you explained that to me, and it made a lot of sense to me. And, I thought at the time, Doug, I said, you know what? I said, I think other people need to kind of know about this technology and kind of the concept behind it. And really, man, to be honest with you, that's one reason we brought your product in at the time. And
people are scared of it because they don't understand it. And nobody ever really put it out there where people could put their eyes on it. They just saw something in the store that looked crazy, and it's like, that's not going to work. Yeah. Gary Loomis even tried putting it out, and he stopped it.
Really?
I'm guessing because the people walking in the Bass Pro shops and academies, whatever, when they see it, they're going to be skeptical and they're just going to go away. But because nobody's ever really put it into action where you can see what's actually going on. I hadn't built one in probably 10 years.
Yeah, it's changed. I know over the years you've kind of changed the concept of how you build them and all that stuff, which we're going to get into. But let me ask you this. I'm interested still in the spiral wrap thing. And for those of you who have come across over the years spiral wrapped rods, what was other than the concept, were you or where did you, let me rephrase that, where did you first come across the spiral wrap technology? And how many people were doing that at the time? Was it something that
there was a few people, Texas. It was a company in Texas called the Texas Twister or something like that. But I was introduced to it by a guy named Bill Stevens. You remember Mr. Bill?
I remember Mr. Bill right here in Louisiana.
Yep, he found me on a site called rodbuilding.org, and he invited me over to his house, and he showed me it, and it went from there. And then I also got hooked up with his, I guess they were partners, Lance Dupree, and I learned tons of stuff from Lance Dupree at Swampland Tackle. That's where I would say Lance probably grew me the most and
Really?
in my talents. You know, I spent a lot of time with Lance. I call Lance my sensei.
Your
You know,
sensei, that's a good way to put it.
He's done me well. He's taught me a lot. Mr. Bill's taught me some things from the very beginning that I still hold true to. And for custom rod builders, one thing Mr. Bill told me is like your blank is like a tuning fork. The more stuff you put on it, the dumber it gets. So when I build a rod now, I put minimal stuff on it. I rarely use a cork grip. It's always a split grip. I don't put a bunch of fancy wrapping. It's pretty. It's a tool. It's a fishing rod. It's not to be pretty.
That's a good way to put it. You know, and anybody who fishes and gets into the technology, Doug, they know that the less components that are on that rod, the more sensitive, the more light it is. It makes it more efficient. In other words, you know.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, Doug, you've been doing this now 16 years.
16.
That's unbelievable. I didn't realize you've been doing it this long. And one of the questions I wanted to ask was, what originally, kind of going back to the early days when you thought about building your first custom rod, what sparked your interest in rod building to get into that? Because that's a big competitive side of the fishing business, you know?
I was at a church fair, and there was a guy there that was selling his rods, and I needed some repaired. So I took them to him to get repaired, and he kind of showed me the ropes. He actually, A.D. Welch is his name. He's an older guy. I don't know what he's doing now, but he's the one who hooked me up with my original supplier. Okay. And that it grew from there.
Wow. Yeah. Well, how old were you when you built your first fishing rod?
Now, dude, you want me to age myself?
I'm putting you on the spot out there, my brother.
16 years ago, and I'm 57, 56, 57. So
okay.
40.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, about 40. I built my first rod.
Wow.
So, and just to see the difference from the rods, I had my original rod that I built. It was a spinnerbait rod. Compared to what I build now, it's like crazy.
Yeah.
Just the components that have changed so much in 16 years, from the big guides to the micro guides.
And I mean, in the fishing industry, that's one of the things that you'd have to agree, I assume, Doug, that the technology has changed even since when I met you. You know, when we were first trying to get your rods and stuff out there. The technology has just changed so much. Touch a little bit on that as far as when you saw the biggest leap in technology as to where it is now in the market today.
My biggest leap is when they started out with when the micro guides came out. That's the biggest leap. And here recently, a lot of suppliers, like I just ordered a bunch of stuff from Batson, you know, very high end blanks, very light, very strong blanks, but reel seats that are made out of carbon fiber that are just like crazy light. It's made out of the same material that your blank is made out of. So you don't lose there's no deadening there, to where your original reel seats may have some plastic or something in it. I'm not sure, but this is pure carbon fiber. Let me see, I got one right here. I don't know if y'all will be able to see it.
Yeah, for everybody watching on YouTube, you're going to be able to see this, guys. So this is a little bonus footage.
This thing is just, how did I get it on there? It's just deadly. It's light. You don't even know that you're holding it in your hand. It's so light.
That's amazing.
And the only weight that you feel on it actually is when you put the hood on it. The hood comes separate.
Really? Yep.
But with this technology, there's a price that comes with it. You know, a regular reel seat might cost you $5-6. This one's $15-16.
Wow. But yeah, that's a big difference.
But bass fishermen, they'll pay that just because the benefits of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Which kind of leads me to my next point, and this was a question I had a little bit further down in the show, but you touching on it now. So, first of all, let me ask you this: custom rods. There's a big market nowadays for custom rods, from the elite, aspect of it, the pro fishermen, down to the average Joe who's looking to, up his game, kind of improve his equipment, that type of stuff. Is custom rods for every angler out there? Let me ask you that. Start out simple. And explain the difference in that, Doug.
A custom rod. Well, with a custom rod, you can come to me, sit down and talk to me and tell me what you want in a rod. I can customize it to the point where if you want 6-inch butt in the back or a 12-inch butt, or what kind of tip you want. If you want double foot guides all the way up, or one double foot and single foots all the way, no hook keeper, no grips, no wind grips or no cork. You can come get what you want.
You can order it your way, in other words.
Right. You can order it your way. You're not, and I don't want to knock the companies that have rods built overseas, but if you order a custom rod from me, I build the rod. Nobody else touches it. So at the end of the day, if something happens, I'm the guy you talk to.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And you know me, my phone. Everybody has my phone number. If you want to talk to me, call me.
That's right.
If you want to holler and scream at me, holler and scream at me. I'm not going to get mad at you because I understand custom rods aren't cheap. They're not cheap, but 9 times out of 10, everybody that I've built a custom rod for, they never went back and bought a rod off the rack. They'll pay the extra money to get a custom rod.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's impressive. That says a lot for your work, Doug, to be honest with you, And you have a really good reputation. Like you said, 16 years, guys, Doug's been doing this. And I can tell you that every person that I've ever had buy a rod from you that I've personally sent to you, whether it was in the beginning days or whatever, they have always been 100% happy with you, Doug. And that says a lot. The way you carry yourself as a business owner, the way that you put your craftsmanship into the product means a lot. And at the end of the day, it's got to be a good product, Doug. Right. And you build a good product.
Right.
So, guys, if you aren't familiar with Doug, check him out at Kajun Limb Custom Rods. If you're watching this right here on YouTube, I'm gonna plug him a couple of times tonight. His phone number is right here scrolling across the bottom of the screen. You can call him, and get in touch with him very, very easily. He's a hands-on type guy. He loves to talk to people about fishing and other things as well, just in general. Just a good guy, man. So, I could vouch for you, Doug. I think you've done a phenomenal job over the years, and you've been a friend of mine since the beginning. That's always done me right and the people I send to you right.
I've been a friend, been knowing you since I think your first child was very, very young.
Yep, Jackson was a little baby.
Yeah,
and sure was.
There's people that we've met together, and there's friends that I've met people and built rods for people that were kids that now have kids, and it's crazy for me to see that. It's crazy.
That's insane. I know I feel the same way. I sell boats to customers, and they'll come back later like that. Their kids, just a small kid, and they buy a family fishing boat, and then they'll come back in the store, Doug, and they buy their first boat for them to fish high school or college. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm getting old, And I know where you're coming from, man. It's hard to believe how fast time flies. But let me ask you this: what's the process of an angler that wants to get in touch with you and inquire about a custom built rod? How does that process usually kind of work out?
Majority of people contact me through Facebook. Now, my phone number's on Facebook. They can call. Just call. We can talk. I'll see what you want. And a lot of people ask, well, you want money? So no, I don't want any money up front. I'll get the money from you when you come get it. I do all this at my house. Anybody's more than welcome. If I'm off, come to my house. You're not coming here while I'm not here. But, if I'm here, come. Sit down and talk. I'll show you the blanks that I have, everything, rods. I got rods that I use when I get to fish, because I do stay busy. I work.
Yeah, what a lot of people may not know is you work full time. That's not you. Building rods is actually kind of like us with the podcast and the social media stuff. You do this as a side hustle.
I do this as I work in a plant. I build rods on the side. I work with a Christian radio station on the side, and I picked up another bad habit: cornhole.
Oh my God, Corn! Tell me
it is
you know,
horrible, bro.
what we're gonna see you on ESPN 8 the Ocho pretty soon, I guess.
Don't say it ain't gonna happen. If you can flip a jig, you can throw a cornhole back.
It's all the same, huh?
Dude, it's very addictive.
Hey, I love cornhole. I love it. I've never got into it competitively, but I can see how guys get hooked on it.
I got about 8 sets of bags, and I'm waiting for another set to show up tomorrow.
Wow. Oh, I didn't know that. So you and I haven't got to talk in a while. So it's we catching up, man. So guys, it's like we sitting around the rod building room at Doug's house. We just catching up on things, which I noticed for all of you who are watching on YouTube. I'm referencing YouTube again. If you're streaming us on YouTube tonight, Doug, you're in your studio at home. It looks like I see rods in the background.
Yeah, I'm in my rod room.
In your rod room, and talk a little bit about that. How you set it up? How that when did you kind of realize you needed to designate a space for that specifically?
Well, when I first started this, I was single, and I was building rods in the trailer I was living in the kitchen, and I would rest the blank on a pillow. It was horrible. Then I got married, and I was using the shed that was on the house, on the garage. Then after being married for a couple of years, we built this house, and now I have a room off the garage desk for me to build rods.
Big time. You're in the big time now.
I'm not going to say big time.
Well, yeah, I'd say you're doing it right. That's for sure. So you got a nice setup there.
Well, I'm at the point where building rods is not how I make a living.
Yeah.
I make a living by going to work, and this is extra. I'm not going to say it's not extra. A few years back, I was working really hard at this, not making a lot of money, but I spent a lot of time work than here. And my wife was like, "Hey, you got a wife." So I had to dial it back. So, I've dialed way back on what I do, but I still stay busy, but I try to balance it. But I'm getting older, and I'm getting closer to that retirement. So I'm trying to dial it back up.
Yeah.
And I've actually started another line called Limb Elite.
Okay.
So, but it's a higher end rod. It's bad to the bone. It's sweet.
Well, touch on that because that's something I wasn't aware of, and listeners may want to hear about that, Doug. So you have the regular lineup. Just to clarify, you have the regular lineup of Kajun Limb rods.
The Kajun Limb was the original rod I started with, and I always said I'll always build the Kajun Limb. That's going to be me, period. Nobody else is going to touch it. I'll never farm it out to China or Japan or anywhere. That'll always be me. Now, the Limb Elites, it's a higher end rod, and at some point I may try to have these built and then try to get them in stores.
Okay.
Something that I won't have as much hands-on time, but I would only do it if I know there's some sort of good quality control, because I don't have a bad name, and I don't want to get a bad name, and I'm going to do everything to keep that from happening. So
that's a good point.
But at some point, that's what I would like to do. It's either of that, or I'm going to eventually, when I do retire, I'm going to go on the road and do shows. And I want to have, you just can't go to a show with one type of rod. You got to have a low end and a high end.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
And these are definitely high end rods.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point there, because, the way I look at trade shows, a lot of these trade shows, like use the Louisiana Sportsman Show, you familiar with that. All of our listeners here in Louisiana are familiar with that. In my opinion, when I was selling lures and stuff like that, and we used to go to the shows, I'd always say I think every body that walks in these shows has a certain budget that they want to spend X amount of dollars that day. And I agree with you. You got to have, if you're looking for a fishing rod, they're looking for the bargain rods. They have guys that are looking for that. Then you stumble upon somebody who might have these elite rods like you have, a high end rod, and there's also a budget for those guys. So you got to have a product at these shows. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and I've only done one show. Is a show that we did together.
That's right. We did a show with Louisiana
with Mr. Joe, and I wasn't comfortable doing it. And I've gone to every show here in Baton Rouge and others since then, and I've seen custom rods, and I'm just like, I can't believe those people are selling those rods in a show. And then I went to the Houston show a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, nice stuff. There was one guy there that was just, I was like, I can't believe, but it is what it is, and I may go do that show next year. I don't know. I haven't done a show since we did that show together.
Yeah.
Blaine Salter, right?
Yeah. We talked at the show a few weeks ago.
He was on me last night. Man, I've been telling you for 10 years now, you need to come get in there with me. I just hadn't had the feeling that it was time. And I don't know that I want to do a show here, because most people around here know me. And most people that go to that show is looking for a bargain. And a guy like me can't compete with Bowie Outfitters selling Falcon combos for $60.
Correct.
That does me no good. I'm wasting my time.
Yeah. That's a very good point, because I agree with you. I think most of our listeners who participate in the shows locally here in Louisiana, they're going there to look for a bargain on a rod,
right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Hell, everybody's looking for a bargain,
Right.
But you do make a good point there that how many guys, I don't even know what custom rods are running right now. I know what they were 10 years ago, but we could talk about that a little bit maybe, but I could only imagine that it's with the price of everything else right now.
Right.
Nowadays, it's not like you mentioned,
up.
A reel seat, like you mentioned, a carbon fiber reel seat is
right.
$15-$16,
My Cajun Limb, I'll just tell everybody up front right now, is $185 plus tax, and it's been that price for about 5 years now. I hadn't gone up on it.
Yeah.
Now the Limb Elites, I cut discounts to people that buy a lot of rods, but this is the first batch I built of them, and the people that buy the first one is $330. It's $300 plus tax, but I'm not making the money on those I should. So the price, I just order. You can't see them, or maybe you can lean up against that door.
Yeah.
I just got a new batch in, so and I may let those go for a discounted price just to get my money, but my initial investments back. But eventually, that's going to be a $350 rod plus tax.
Yeah. Which there's a clientele for that, Doug.
Oh, there's definitely a clientele.
Yeah, there's a clientele for that. Sounds like you're already aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, I got people that want, the heavies went like that. Yeah. 7.4 heavies, and those blanks aren't new. They were made in the United States for a while, and they farmed them back out because from what I understand, they were having issues with them. So they farmed them out, and they're back. And the guy that's won I forget his name, the Redfish Cup 3 years down here, has been testing those blanks, and he's not having a problem with them. And Lance Dupree turned me on to them, and I bought them no hesitation, and bought into the company, and I'm not looking back. I have all the faith in them. I started with a 6.8 medium, a 7.2 medium heavy, and a 7.4 heavy. And then I'm going to take the 7.4 and cut it down to a 6.10, and the 7.2 I'll probably cut down to a 6.10, and I'll keep a 6.8, so I'll have 5 in that line of blanks. So everybody in their niche can get one, because a little short fella like me, a 7'4" rod is a little bit too long. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not everybody's made for a 7.5 foot rod.
And that's a great point you bring up also right there. I mean, you oftentimes hear guys that play golf, Doug. They talked about custom fitting for golf clubs, because not everybody can play, effectively with the same length golf clubs, so on and so forth. But what people don't think about is a lot of that stuff pertains to fishermen as well, correct?
Right.
And kind of touch on that a little bit.
Man, I got a guy messaging me now about an 8 foot XD cranking blank, but he's 6'8". He can handle that. I had an 8 foot cranking rod, but that it's too big,
Yeah.
And it depends on, like in the spillway where we fish, a spinnerbait rod, a spillway special, 6'8". That's perfect because you can roll that thing anywhere as you want.
That's right.
Now, and if you're way off from the bank, you can still use a 7-foot rod, 7'2", just depending on how good your casting is. But I like in close and personal. I like to be right there with them.
Yeah.
It's just and it depends on the person, I know people. If somebody comes to me and they tell me I've been using 6'6" rods all my life with pistol grips, I'm like, you're a fool. I hate to hurt your feelings. Don't get mad at me.
But so why is that? I was about to ask you about the old pistol grips.
Because a 7-foot rod picks up so much more line than a 6'6". Think of it as leverage.
Yeah, that does make sense.
And most of us stand up now. When we're fishing, we're standing up. The longer the rod, the faster you can pick up the line.
Yeah.
And that's with the reel too. So you can use both of them together.
Correct. It's got much faster as far as that technology goes. Right. So, and I was going to ask you, what are some of a couple of the questions when somebody's approaching you about building a rod, Doug? What are some of the common questions that you often get asked when that first initial call comes in to kind of scope you out and get a feel for what you have to offer?
The biggest question is, what's the price?
What's the price?
What's the price?
They want to know the price right off the top.
What's the price? What can you do? 9 times out of 10, somebody that's coming to get a custom rod, they already know. They know. Yeah. They know what they want.
Yep.
They know what rods are supposed to do.
Yeah.
I've been asked to come talk to people about the rods I build. You know what it's like for somebody to stand up and try to tell somebody about rods? For me to go to a bass club and tell guys that have been fishing all their life about fishing rods, it's like, it don't work.
Yeah.
Most people know what they want and they know what a rod's supposed to do. So they come tell me what they want. And if I go, hey, you might not want to be cranking a square bill with a 7.5-foot heavy, because people use different things. I know a guy that fishes a worm with a medium light.
Wow.
Not this guy.
Not that guy.
That's
not this guy either.
But that's what he's been doing,
Yeah.
I can give people advice or what I think, what you need to do, what you need to try. People are willing to try.
Yeah. So the number one question you get is price. Obviously, people want to know what your price tag is on them. What are some of the other common questions that people are concerned with when they contact a custom rod builder?
Can you put my name on it? I'm telling you, Ray, it's not. I'm telling you, when somebody calls for a custom rod, it's usually not somebody that doesn't know what they want.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it. If somebody's watching this and they call me, they're going to tell me what they want.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I want a rod to fish worms. Okay. 7 foot. And I'll go, what do you want to spend? I got a $330 rod or I have a $185 rod.
Yeah.
I got some people that tell me money's not an issue.
Mm.
I'll sell them a $330 rod. If money's the issue, I'll sell them a $185 rod.
Yeah.
And it's rare that I get somebody that what happens if it breaks.
Really?
It's rare that I get that. And the good thing with, like, I use a lot of mud hole blanks on the $185. Their blanks have a serial number. So if you break it 9 times out of 10, they don't care. Send them their $15 and they'll send you another blank.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I had people send half of what they want back and they just send them another blank.
I'll be damned. You see, and that shocks me about the warranty thing, because that's one of the questions I was going to ask you a little later on. But, working retail when I was with Cabela's and running a fishing department, Bowie Outfitters running their fishing department for a while, that was the number one question we get as a big box retail store is, what's the warranty if I break this thing? Because you'd hear these guys bragging all the time about, man, I break every rod I've ever tried. They break all my hook set. And this and that. You hear all this BS about how much they break rods. And their number one question, Doug, was, what's the warranty on it? Can I bring it back if it breaks and just get another one off the shelf?
And that's Mr. Bill Stevens said that's the biggest thing that's killed the custom rod industry is all these rods that are made overseas are made for dirt cheap.
Yeah.
And they don't really lose anything if Billy Bob brings in a broke rod and they swap it out. They hadn't really lost anything. For me, I mean, I'm building them. It's my time and my money. And I've had people say, it just broke. I cast it and it broke. I said, well, bring it to me, let me see. Well, they got 25-pound braid on a medium action rod. And I'm like, dude, one thing, the blank is splintered all up and down. It looks like you either kneeled on it or a corridor or something slammed on it. You didn't just cast and it broke. Something happened to it before. And I've been doing it long enough. I know what to look for. So
yeah, you know the ins and outs of it as far as that goes.
And I try to work with people. But if a person calls me and goes, the first thing out of their mouth is, what's the warranty? It's like, nah, you don't want my rods. Because they'll go break it and bring it back. I don't want to have to deal with that.
Yep, you can almost guarantee that guy's coming back if he buys that rod.
And dude, and I'm one of those guys too, is I've had guys that just got married, got kids on the way, and I know they got money problems, and I'll talk them out of it. So, dude, you don't want this. I don't want to build you a rod, because your responsibility is way more important to me than to sell you this rod, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because people do stupid things with their money,
Oh yeah.
And I've talked several guys out of it, dude. I don't want to sell you a rod because you're telling me how broke you are, and you got 12 kids at home and you got another one on the way. I'm not selling you a rod.
Yeah, and that's what I kind of refer back to what I said at the beginning of the show, Doug. That's just the character in you, and I've always respected the hell out of you because of the character of person that you are, man. And that's a little bit about being a Christian, like I know you're a big believer in, and we'll talk about that probably for a few minutes. But yeah, I mean that's awesome, man. It's not about selling the product necessarily when it's not the right fit for somebody. So
I used to say all the time, when I sell a rod, part of me goes out with it, because I put everything into it. And I'll tell you a short story. And Dennis TJ, he texted me one day and he said,
former Bassmaster Elite,
Bassmaster Elite. And I've never told people and used his name, but he told me one day it would be all right. And this was years ago. And he told me, if I win this tournament, everybody's going to know who Kajun Limb is. And I sat there for a minute, and I've never had a panic attack in my life, never freaked out. And I was just like, oh my God. It's just like I was a ton of bricks, because this is how that guy was making a living. And he's putting all that trust into what I'm building. And I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And at that point, if I could have, I'd have went back and got those rods from him, because I was like, I don't want that stress,
Yeah,
but,
it made you. That was that moment where you had to believe in your own self. At that point, though,
right.
you had to kind of have that confidence.
And it's not believing. The biggest thing with a custom guy is we buy everything. We're dependent on somebody else's technology, engineering for the blanks. Gods and real seats, they are what they are. They're going to be good, but a blank could fail at any minute. It's not my fault because I didn't engineer it,
Yeah.
And blanks will just break. Some of them just break for no reason at all.
Yeah.
I had a guy that was a pro that fished a classic. He told me the first time he ever picked up a Kistler rod, first cast, it broke. Nothing he did. It was just manufacturing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't nothing bad they did, because they don't make the scrim that the rod is made out of. They buy that from somebody else and make the blank.
Yeah, it's something out of their control altogether, So
yeah, good, bad. It is
that's
what
right.
it is.
It's like that in everything. It's in every industry. It's like that. So that's understandable, and you just got to roll with the punches when that happens and address it in the best way you can as the business owner. And you've done that, obviously, because you have customers that have continued to come back to you, So, we talked about I asked you about some of the common questions that you get. What are some, when you're looking at custom rod building versus store-bought, and a customer's trying to make that decision, what are some of the biggest misconceptions about custom rod builders or custom rods that are built? Let me ask you that.
I don't know of any misconceptions.
Well, that's good.
I mean, the biggest thing is they're a little bit more pricier. I mean,
Yeah.
they are, period.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're not made over there.
Yeah.
By somebody getting paid 25 cents an hour or whatever they pay them, and they're not put out like tennis shoes or t-shirts.
Correct.
It takes me a couple hours to build a rod.
Yeah. Well, when you're building rods, Doug, and we're talking about buying components and nowadays prices and all that type of stuff. So when you're looking, when you're building a rod for somebody, is that name brand components that anglers are seeing on big box store shelves as far as the components go? Do you stick with name brand blanks? Because I know like whenever we first started, I met you and I first started trying to help you out, I'd get a lot of people that would ask me, they would say, hey, is that a Falcon blank? Or is that a G Loomis blank? Or what is it? How does it kind of explain to the guys who are listening to the show tonight how that all pans out? Is that name brands that carry over into the custom side of things? Or is it brands that most anglers aren't even familiar with that offer quality components? Or do you get a little bit of both?
The original blank I used was, quote unquote, the original Falcon blank. And that guy went out of business. And I don't know what happened. Somebody's making those blanks again, but I don't know if I can even get them. I use a lot of MHX blanks. Kajun. You ever heard of Kajun?
Yeah, Kajun rods.
A guy came
Fat Cat Newton. I remember seeing Fat Cat Newton pushing Kajun rods.
Well, a guy came to me one day, I want some rods, but I want them built on that blank. I'm like, dude, I don't even know if I can get them blanks. So I called them up. Well, yeah, we sell them. So I ordered them up. Great blanks. They're a little bit heavier than most stuff, but they're good blanks. What's his name? John Cruz. That's a rod he fishes with.
Really?
And Gary Loomis makes blanks. I think it's Temple Fork, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And Batson is a blank that I'm using now. The Eternity blank. That it's a high end blank, and it's bad to the bone.
It's bad to the bone.
But if you go out and search, you can find blanks.
Yeah.
But
I mean, when you're talking about the store-bought rods being such a difference in price, Doug, is it truly the components that separate the two rods, or is it the price of labor in overseas rods that are being built? What's your opinion on that?
Mass production.
Mass production. It's just numbers. That's what's keeping it down. The price is lower.
Mass production. I mean, the big rod companies. The rods that everybody's using. Some companies use Fuji guides, some don't.
Yeah.
You can look at them, and Fuji guides are going to have stamped Fuji on them. Most cards on a rod is going to tell you what guides are on them. And if they don't say Fuji guides, they're using somebody else. And the rods that the guides are constantly breaking on, I'm not going to name their name, they're not Fuji guides. I use strictly Fuji guides. I have up until now. I just ordered some more guys. I'm going to try on some Sackley type rods, some spinning rods for a guy. Me and another guy's going to try to go down that road and see what happens.
Yeah. But, and something kind of throwing it back to the beginnings again, and I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, but it got me thinking about something you said. The name Kajun Limb. Kajun Limb is what you started out. Kajun Limb Custom Rods is when you started out, Doug. Kind of explain to the listeners tonight how that name came about. Because when you're starting up a company, everybody's, brainstorming to try to figure out a name for their company. Well, you would think Kajun Limb had something to do with, everything in Louisiana is being Cajun. But you kind of had a different twist on things that caught my attention when I first met you. So explain kind of the beginning as far as how the name Kajun Limb came.
Louisiana Cajun. Everybody thinks of Louisiana as Cajun. What was the first fishing rods ever used? They were limbs.
That's right.
Kajun Limb. So that's the road when it hit me, and I was like, that's it. That's the way it's going to be. Now it's evolving to the Limb Elite. These things, these little spinning rods, they're probably going to be willow limbs. I don't know.
That's pretty good. A willow limb. That's catching, man. That makes sense. That makes sense. So kind of shifting gears here, Doug, I want to ask this to you. And, as long as I've known you, you and I have been friends. You have always been a person of faith,
Right.
and without getting too political and into too much into religion, that is something that has always intrigued me about you, and I respected the hell out of you. And I just wanted to kind of get your opinion, on that. As far as, do you feel like your faith in the good Lord above has kind of brought you to this moment of where you are in your career, as far as professionally, what you do for a living, but also as a rod builder as well? Kind of give me your thoughts on that.
Most definitely, because when I first started this rod building was about the same time I was getting out of tournament fishing, and I'm a plant worker. I work every other weekend. While I was tournament fishing, that other weekend, I was in a boat, and God was beating on me, brother. It's like, you should be in my house. And I had this conversation with a guy the other day. That's my conviction. That's for nobody else. I don't look down on anybody that fishes on Sundays or fishes tournaments. I work every other Sunday. But that was my conviction to stop it. And I've had people try to drag me out. Oh, God's not going to be mad at you if you fish a tournament. I know he's not going to be mad at me, but I made him a promise that I'm not going to do it. I really don't sell rods on Sundays. I don't push rods on Sundays. And that's just where I am. And part of my rod building is a ministry. If I get somebody over here, it's going to be mentioned. It's going to be brought up. And you'll be surprised the people that wanted it brought up, but were scared to talk about it. I'm here for that.
That's amazing, man.
It's not about money with me. It's something bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's amazing, because the stories that you probably come across and hear from customers that wasn't even about, wasn't expecting it.
Right.
Wasn't even, they came here to buy a fishing rod from you. It turns into so much more than that.
Right.
And I think that pertains to a lot of stuff in life that we do, whether it's building rods, whether it's podcast, meeting people that you come across, you hear their stories, you meet them out at the boat launch fishing, in the woods hunting, whatever it may be. And that's what makes outdoorsmen, in my opinion, as a community and as a family, Doug,
right.
so close and gelled together, because we're a tight-knit community. Whether you hunt, you fish, you enjoy the outdoors, whatever it is, we all kind of share that same bond and common interest. And it can't be that it just happens just to happen. There's got to be greater powers above that interfere and play into that,
Right. My original business card, and a lot of people do it, Christians, they put John 3:16.
Yep.
And the blank I was using at the time was called a benchmark.
That's right.
My business card had John 3:16, Cajun Limb, benchmark for the rest. Well, I gave the card to a guy, and he looked at it and he goes, Jesus, benchmark for the rest. And I was like, wow, you know what? I never put that together. It never hit me. And I've gotten away from the John 3:16, because to me that's for a Christian. We know what John 3:16 is, but somebody that doesn't believe in Jesus, how do you reach them? Romans 1:20, where they talk about the things of God, what He created. So I changed my little thing to Romans 1:20. Go read it.
Gotcha. Yep. Yeah, and that's awesome, man. So I could not have this podcast tonight with you, Doug, and have you on without talking about that, because that's always something, whether you believe in a higher power or not, I've always been really intrigued by that, man. And I appreciate you spreading the word out there, because I think a lot of people, especially nowadays with the way the world is, we could all use a little extra,
Yeah. I could get real political on there, but I'm not.
No, hey, you've never strayed away from a political conversation.
Right,
anybody that follows Doug on social media, on his personal pages, or Doug personally, he will not stray away from a political conversation.
And I just met him at the Houston show. Great guy, and we did this on Facebook, and we talked, and it's like, people read our own prejudices, or however you want to say it. We read into something what somebody's saying. We read into it what we want to read into it. Until you sit down and look that person in the eyes and talk with them, I've been called a racist many times, and I'm not. But I will tell you the truth, period, because I live it.
And people just don't want to hear the truth. People say they want to hear the truth nowadays, but they don't want to hear the truth nowadays.
There's a term called cognitive dissonance, and the easiest way for me to explain it is your mama's gumbo is the best in the world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You could go eat somebody else's mama's gumbo and it's going to be good. It'd be better than your mama's, but you're going to say, no, my mama's is best, even though the evidence is out there telling you that it's not.
That's right.
The way you grew up or whatever, all you've heard all your life this is what it is. But I'm going to pull off of that a little bit. You don't give me fire. Let me slide my soapbox back up under there.
If you watch it on YouTube, guys, he's turning different colors. You can kind of tell. But look, I'm gonna get you off of that subject. I'm gonna save you on that one. Get you off of that.
I love people, and my wife told me one day.
Oh, I know.
She told us a couple weeks ago. We were at the Houston show, and she told a guy. He said, "He's not a preacher now, but he probably will be one day." I'm like, oh man, I don't know about a preacher. Evangelist, talking to people. Yeah, just standing in a pulpit. I don't think that's me. That's not my personality.
No, not at all. I would have to agree with that. That's probably not your personality.
No.
So, well,
because I know who I am.
I know
who I am, bro. There's a scripture says, chief sinner, I'm him. I can't look down on nobody because I know who I am.
Yep. Well, good for you. Applaud you for that. So, well, look, I'm gonna get you off of that subject because I don't want you to get too stressed out and have to take that extra blood pressure medicine tonight.
Ooh, I don't take blood pressure medicine.
Well, start
my
taking
ears
it.
are getting red.
Wait, well, going back to the fishing, the stuff that everybody came here to talk about tonight. So they joining us. Hey, I want you to. Can you do some name dropping? Doug Blacklock been in the business for 16 years building custom rods. I'm sure you mentioned one guy a while ago that fished professionally. I'm sure you could probably mention a couple of guys that are out there that may be customers of yours and kind of tell some stories on that if you got.
But I won't.
Oh, come on! You can't. Why is that such a secret society type deal? Is it because of the sponsorship thing?
Well, yeah, we'll go back to Bill Stevens. Bill Stevens told me one day, and it's true. He said, those guys, I'm not saying all of them, there are some. When you see them go through, they got all their sponsored rods on the deck, but when you open their box, that's not what they're using.
Yeah. Well, everybody now with social media, Doug, they know that. So, but that's what's intriguing because us as the average community, we kind of want to know what goes on with that type of stuff. I know at one point you were probably like that. You want to know kind of, hey, I know he pushes this, and we're not everybody's just oblivious to the fact that, okay, well, he's sponsored by this. That's all he uses, and the guys are even upfront and tell you that, nowadays. But for these mainly for the young guys out there now, because you see in, high school fishing, you see in college fishing, these kids coming up, Doug, it's important that they know that, hey, just because you have a sponsorship, that or this person that has a sponsorship with a particular company, man, that's not all they use. They use other products as well. Yeah,
it's crazy. I've had a guy come to me sponsored by rods, and he told me these rods are junk. His sponsor, he told me they were junk. Professional. They're junk. I need you to build me some crankbait rods. And I built him crankbait rods.
But they pay the bills.
I'll never mention his name.
Yeah.
And there's people that I just give rods to. There's going to come a day, and I've tried to get to it. It's always worked out where I couldn't get to him. But I'm going to put a rod in Gerald Swindle's hand one day. I'm going to freak him out.
G-Man, I love G-Man. Everybody loves G-Man that follows the sport. And you actually told me that several years back. You said eventually I'm gonna get to him and I'm gonna get a rod in his hand. You know what's cool? I got a small story about G-Man. We went down to we were at the Bassmaster Classic on Lay Lake that we took a trip. It was a group of us from right here in Ascension Parish that had went down. Bubba from Cabela's that worked with us, and some other guys. We went down there when Kevin Van Dam won it on Lay Lake years back. And Doug, I don't even know what year that was, but anyway, we got there early, and the way the launch was set up at Lay Lake, all the guys were in line, and they had like one launch. They had to go in this circle and come out of it, to be able to go park the truck. So we kind of parked the vehicle. We got out. We walked all the way down the line. And as we're getting down, the guys are getting out of their trucks, and here we are. We kind of fan guying on some of the guys because we were big, fat
nerds,
big nerds of it,
basically.
Nerds. That's right. That's what we were. And we talked to Skeet Reese, and I remember Skeet Reese. He talked to us, and he told us that he had some family from New Orleans. His wife had some family from New Orleans, and that's when the Classic was scheduled to come to Lake Catawatchee when KVD won that one in Catawatchee. And he was trying to hit us up on what we knew about Lake Catawatchee in the line of the Bassmaster Classic at Lay Lake. He's talking to us. But we get down there, and we didn't realize that we were in a restricted area that we weren't supposed to be in. We had just took off walking. Nobody ever told us anything. So we're standing out there, and I hear some guy holler at me, and he's like, "Hey, man," he says, "Can you grab something for me?" And I turned around, and it's Gerald Swindle, okay? So he's in his Triton boat. He was with Triton boats at the time. And it was freezing that morning. It was real cold. And he said, "Man, I need you to grab my coffee." He says, "In my truck." And he was in his big jacked up Toyota Tundra, okay? So I said, "Man, that's freaking G-Man." I was like, "Hey, man, how you doing?" And, he's like, "Oh, good, man." He's like, "You can grab my coffee out my truck. It's in my cup holder." So I said, "Yeah, no problem." So I go in his truck. I open up his Tundra. And sure enough, he has a Circle K cup full of coffee, hot coffee. So I walk over and I hand it to him, and I'm like, "Man, hey, I'm a big fan. Good luck today," and I'm telling him. He's like, "Yeah." So I said, "You want me to hold this while you get your odds out?" He's like, "No, man." He says, "I can't get into my tackle boxes in my boat." And I said, "Why not?" He says, "Well, they frozen shut." So he's pouring his coffee. So he wants me to grab the coffee, and he's like, "Man, I'm going to pull on him. Can you pour the coffee on my latches while I pull and yank on them?" So I'm pouring coffee for him on the latches, and here we go, him trying to pry open his tackle and his live well lids because they were frozen shut. So we had a good laugh about that. I said, "Man, I thought you wanted it for you to drink to kind of wake up," and he's laughing. He's like, "No, man." He's like, "Tricks of the trade." He said, "I've been around for a long time." He said, "And the G-Man always figures out how to find a way to get it done." He said, and we laughed, man. And I tell that story. I told somebody that a while back, and he's like, "Man," he said, "he's such a good dude." He said, "He'll give you the shirt off his back."
Yeah.
He would be the guy, Doug, that'd be great, man. If you could get your rod in his hands, he's such an entertainer to begin with. And on top of that, he's a phenomenal fisherman.
And when I do that, I tell them, I don't want anything from you. I don't really ever have to hear from you again. I just want you to have it.
Yeah.
If you desire to contact me later, that's good.
Yeah.
But, take it, use it. Maybe.
Well, didn't years ago, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but didn't you send a Kajun Limb custom rod to the White House, to the president at one point?
Yes, I did.
Okay, kind of tell that story if you don't mind. I think people would like to hear that.
Through church. There's a guy at church. I don't want to name his name, but he's in Washington, and I told him I wanted to build a rod for the president. And I actually have the thing that they sent me back. It's a form letter because it came back and says, "Thank you for the inscribed bamboo fishing rod." I don't build bamboo fishing rods, but not many people have something signed by the President of the United States.
And which president was it?
Bush.
George Bush.
George W. Bush.
George W. Bush.
And through the same guy that I went to church with, I sent another rod. I actually saw the man speak at church. I won't name his name, but he was a commander for Delta Force.
Oh, wow.
And super nice guy.
Yeah.
And I told him, after it was over with, I told him, I said, "Look, I want to build your rod, and I'm going to send it to you." And he just thought I was just another guy. Then he got the rod. He sent me a picture with the hat. I sent him a hat, and he's holding a rod. And the dude he was a general in our army. And
that's awesome.
To the bone.
And for those of you listening who don't know, Doug, you're ex-military as well. So I'm sure that means a lot to you. Thank you for your service from all of us listening. And we can't thank you enough for that. So I'm sure that was very special to receive that from both of those, those I would say customers, but both of those gentlemen. So that's pretty cool, man.
Dude, and there's one person when I do get to go to a BASS event, I look for one person.
And who's that?
James Overstreet.
James Overstreet. Yeah, been taking photos for years. Phenomenal photographer.
Super nice guy.
Yeah.
Veteran. I will go look for him.
I didn't know James was a veteran. He was a veteran then.
Yep. Super, super nice guy. Before I look for anybody else, I'm going to find him.
Really?
And he treats me just good as gold.
Yep.
And that I'm going to go find him.
That's awesome. When's the last time you went to a professional event? Because it's been since Toledo Bend since I've been, Doug. I know we used to go to several of them.
Dude, I think the last when they weighed in at the Astro Stadium, that was the last one. I went to the Saturday weigh-in.
Okay,
that was it. That was a classic.
That was the classic.
I think Lee won it.
Okay, Jordan Lee when he won in Texas.
Was that the first one he won?
I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, I believe it was, Doug. So, hey, what's your thoughts? I'm sure everybody has an opinion on this. What's your thoughts now since the whole Bassmaster MLF thing split? And we've talked about that on episodes before that I had last summer. But what's your thoughts on it? I'm curious. I always ask people that's followed the sport for so long.
I'm not really a fan of the MLF.
Yeah,
it just to me they got bad intentions, and that to me that's never good. You know what I'm saying? I just think they have bad intentions.
Yeah,
it is what it is. I mean, they purposely said. I think when the Bassmasters had the Classic, they purposely set another event while the Classic was going on, and they set it up to where their guys can't go fish BASS. But I don't see where BASS, and I could be wrong, I don't see where BASS would keep their people from fishing MLF. But on the flip side of that, from what I understand, and I don't know the inner workings of all this stuff, it's just what I heard, BASS brought it on themselves.
Yeah.
So, you can't, it is what it is.
Yeah, and look, I mean, as a fan of the sport that we in, I actually had this conversation the other day. I sold it was a pretty cool deal. I had a phone call at work the other day, and I had this lady call, and she said, hey, I'm looking to buy a boat for my son. He's graduating high school. He's into fishing. She says, and it's going to be his first boat. And she said that he has on his own. And I said, that's awesome. I love dealing with customers like that, And lo and behold, we started talking, and she started asking me a little bit about myself and how long I had been in the boat industry and this and that. And she said, it seems like you have a pretty good knowledge of the boating industry. And she said, my husband's a fisherman. And I said, oh, okay. And I hear that. I'm thinking local fisherman,
Right.
And as she continues to talk, I said, well, what's your name? And she says, she tells me her name, and the last name is Hackney. And I'm like, wait a second. I'm like Greg Hackney from Gonzales, Louisiana. And she's like, yeah, that's my husband. And I'm buying a boat. We're buying a boat for my son who's graduating. So I'm like, well, hell, I know Greg a little bit through the grapevine. I have friends of mine that are friends with him, followed him for years. So anyway, we ended up selling a little boat to one of their sons that graduated high school. Shout out to him. Congratulations for graduating. And this was his first boat on his own. And when he got there, we started talking, and he told me, he said, Dad's in Chickamauga right now fishing in Tennessee. He said, he don't let me fish in his boat. He said, I can't spray any kind of scent in the boat. I can't do this in the boat. He said, so Mom and Dad's getting me my own boat. He said, so I could do all that stuff. And we kind of laughed about that. And it was just a cool story, man. But I told him, I said, what do you think about Dad going back to BASS versus, MLF and this and that? I said, because really I feel like it's been harder to follow, as a sport. You think because there's more as a fan, we would all be, thrilled with that. And some people they are thrilled with that. But I find that I used to look forward to that tuning in to Bassmaster Live,
right.
Or Bass Tracks throughout the day whenever there was a big tournament and all the big names were competing for those spots, for that win. And with them separating, this is just my take on it, in my opinion. I just feel like we lost some of that magic in the sport instead of gaining some of that magic.
You know, and I was losing. I was just like, I didn't even want to watch it. When Gerald came back, you know, I started watching again when Greg came back.
Yep.
I was like, hey, you know, I'm gonna follow it.
Yep.
I like it.
And that's what we talked about. I told her, I said, I was so happy when I saw Greg come back. You know, your dad. I told him, the son, I said, I feel so good that I'm glad that your dad came back to it, because I feel like they kind of went back to their roots of where they began, you know, with it, which really a bunch of them, it all began with FLW, Doug. You know that. And those of you who follow the sport know that. And the opens and all that type of stuff. But a lot of the guys that started out in those opens, that was always BASS. So that's kind of where, you know, growing up, coming up in the 80s and you know, in my time frame, the Bill Dances, the Roland Martins, all the guys that you see, Jimmy Houston, that's what I knew bass fishing as being. I knew, you know, tournaments were 5 fish, the 5 heaviest fish coming to the scales. Back when they were doing it in the beginning days, it was 10 fish at that time, you know. And I felt like, you know, MLF, not to knock MLF, but I felt like we lost a lot of that magic. And I'm glad to see some of the original OGs, like I like to call them, coming back to the sport. And I think there's a reason those guys are coming back.
I think some more are going to come back.
And I do too. I think it is. I think as some of these guys get closer to retirement, Doug, that you're going to see a lot of these big names that we were familiar with. They kind of stepped away. They did their thing for a while. But I think that they're eventually going to come back over to bass and kind of round out those careers, I think, in that side, if I'm not mistaken. That's just my thoughts.
I knew where you were going with that boat thing when you started.
Really?
I got stopped at work the other day and he goes, man, you know, Greg Hackney bought his son a boat and a truck for graduation. I said, what?
Yeah, and they did tell me. He said something about a truck they had got. So yeah, that must be true. So you knew about that?
Yeah, I knew. That's why I was laughing when you were telling me.
I'll be damned.
I hear all kinds of stuff, dude.
I'm sure.
I've been doing it for so long. People know, and people just talk, bro.
They do. And you know what an awesome thing, man. I mean, you know, I think we all wish we could do that for our kids whenever they graduate, But yeah, that was just a cool story because you touched on, you know, I asked you about the MLF versus bass, and me and him had that conversation the other day. So it just happened to be that played into it, but pretty cool. And I'm glad to see it, man, happen where these guys are coming back, like I mentioned. So, well, Doug, we're getting close to rounding out, guys. Well, I know we're keeping everybody long enough tonight, but do you get an opportunity to go fishing? And if you do, what's your favorite place in Louisiana? I like to ask people that. What's your favorite place to fish in Louisiana when Doug gets a chance to go?
I love Toledo Bend, but I hadn't been there in 3 or 4 years. Most of the fishing I've done, man, I got a 19.5-foot train that gets out of the shed about twice a year. Just don't have time. Most of my fishing's been at Concordia and St. John with Charles Anderson with Shango Lures. He puts on it's a Wednesday night tournament now. That's mostly what I get to do.
Gotcha.
I don't have time.
Yeah. Yep, man. I know. Work calls, full-time job, this job, and then being a husband and everything else involved with it. It takes up a lot of time.
And you touched on the Christianity part, and I probably told you this. It never panned out. I got brought into a Christian radio station to do an outdoor show, but some things happened and it never panned out. I still work with them.
Yeah,
it may happen one day. I don't know when, but because I got so many irons in the fire. You know, it's just maybe I need to get rid of some of these irons and maybe God's want me to do it. We'll see.
Yeah, who knows? Time will tell on that. Time will tell. Well, last question I got for you, Doug. Kajun Limb Outdoors, and you might have just answered that. Where do you see Kajun Limb Outdoors 10 years down the road?
Doing shows, probably.
Hopefully
I'll be doing shows. You know, Blaine Salter Jigger Pope. Man, we need to go to Pennsylvania next year. Pennsylvania has a show that's 10 days long.
Oh, wow.
It's in Harrisburg, I believe, and it's huge. But that's a 2-week commitment.
Yeah,
and if I go to something like that, I would love to do that one time a year for the next 20 years. I would have to bring 100 rods with me. I would probably sell them. I would have to build some ice fishing rods. Could you see a Kajun Limb ice fishing rod?
I can see it. That thing about, what, 12 inches?
But
14,
the good
16
thing
inches?
from my military experience, I have friends that live in that town. So,
Yeah.
I may do it one day.
Yep.
Hopefully. Hopefully I'm famous. I'm tired of being infamous.
Oh, well, I tell you what, I think you're a little bit of both, if you ask me.
Hey, dude, as long as when I die, this touched somebody, I'm happy.
That's right. That's the way I look at life, too.
Dennis TJ sent me a CD a few years back, and one of the songs on it's called Faces. And it talks about the people, when you die, God tells you to turn around.
That's a Tupac song, right?
No. And when God tells you to turn around, you're looking at the faces that you touched. As long as I get to do that, I'll be good to go.
That's right. Well said, man.
As long as I get my good and faithful servant in the end, I'm good to go.
You're doing well. That's right. That's where we all hope to end up at. So, well, buddy, I tell you what, let people know listening to the show tonight, how can they reach you? Give them your information and let them know anything else you got coming up. If you want to share anything coming up or any information you want to share.
Kajun Limb Outdoors LLC on Facebook's the easiest way to get me. Send me a message in Messenger or Doug Blacklock. Call me, text me, message me. That's the easiest way. Ask somebody. Don't take my word. Ask somebody.
That's right. And I'll vouch for you all day long, every day, man. Great products, great guy, and you will not be disappointed. So, buddy, it was so good catching up with you tonight. I appreciate you, as always, coming on the show.
Wait, we can't let this go without me saying it. Candy, if you're watching, I still love you.
That's
what I'm talking about, right?
That's right. I know exactly what you're talking about. Well, man, hey, look, Doug, I really appreciate the time tonight. Yes. Thank you so much, man.
Tell the wife I said hello.
I will. Same with you, and we'll do it again soon, man. Take care.
All right, brother.
All right, brother.
Bye.
Well, guys, that's it. That's our show with my good friend Doug Blacklock of Kajun Limb Outdoors, Kajun Limb Custom Rods. Such a great guy, man. If you're not familiar with Doug, go check him out on his social media pages, his Facebook page, or you could contact him by dialing the number right here. If you're tuning in on YouTube, you could get him at the number scrolling across the screen. You could go back and watch this episode that we did on our YouTube channel right here. You can reach out to Doug, get him to build you any kind of custom rod that you want. If you're into bass fishing, you maybe have a child that's into competitive fishing, you're looking to kind of up the tackle game as far as your child goes, get them something a little bit nicer. Maybe you have a Father's Day gift you want to get for them, or a birthday gift, any of the special occasion type stuff. Give my buddy Doug over at Kajun Limb Outdoors and Custom Rods a call. You will not be disappointed, guys. As always, if you enjoyed this episode and you streamed us on our YouTube channel right here, guys, if you like the video, please hit that subscribe button. We appreciate you giving us a thumbs up. It really helps us and motivates us to keep bringing you guys great content, which we love doing anyway. So please hit that smash button for subscribing and that like button. We'd appreciate it. And if you're tuning in on audio, you can stream us on all your favorite platforms, guys. Apple Podcasts. We are now on iHeartRadio. We're on Amazon. We're on Spotify. Pretty much anywhere where you can get your favorite podcast, you can look us up at Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors Podcast. Until next time, guys, that's all we got. This is Jacob, Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors, signing off. Y'all have a good night and take care. We'll see you in outdoors soon.